So at this point, I'm going to stop sharing. If you have questions, put them in the chat. We'll try to answer them. But I'm really excited about our first speaker, Kristina Weber. And Kristina is going to present on intellectual freedom. Welcome, Kristina. You are free to share your slides.
Thanks, Dan. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I see so many of you are coming to us from your circulation desks. So I know that that takes quite a bit of multitasking to do, and I appreciate you being here to listen to me. All right. Let me grab my slides. I hate it when the bar goes right over where I need to get to. There we go. Okay. So I know that this is a topic that gives us all a lot of stress, right? It makes us all really nervous and it makes us worry. And so hopefully today I will help you to understand it a little better and to know where to go for more information. First, a little bit about me. I am the Intellectual Freedom Chair for ISLE, and my ISLE email address is there on the screen for you. So if you'd like to reach out to me, please feel free. It's intelfreedom@isled.org. I am a high school librarian in Hampshire, Illinois. Most of you probably don't know where that is. It's kind of near Elgin, in the far northwest suburbs. I'm also on a committee for ALA that includes members of AASL, ALSC, which is Library Services to Children, and YALSA, Young Adult Library Services Association. So it's a school and public library cooperative committee. And our charge over the past 2 years has been to really dig into the topic of intellectual freedom and how to support people in children's libraries of all kinds with this issue. I'm also a public library trustee for my local library district. And actually right now I'm the president of the library board. So I have the opportunity to see this both from my pretty large unit district's perspective, K-12, and then also from the public library's perspective too. So the thing that I really want to start with as we start to talk about intellectual freedom is the library's mission. I feel like it's so important for us to remember why we're here, why we do what we do, and where we're approaching this topic from. So the library's mission, basically it comes down to being a welcoming third space, right? Within a school building. We're not a classroom, really. And we're a place where there should be something for everyone. A place where kids can explore and discover new things, to come up with ideas and find out more about them. We try to get just right books in kids' hands, and just right means a lot of things. It doesn't necessarily have anything to do with reading ability. And we talk a lot about providing windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors for our kids, right? Opportunities for them to see themselves in books, opportunities for them to see other cultures in books, and opportunities for them to walk in others' shoes. So what is intellectual freedom? Intellectual freedom gives people, including minors, the right to think for themselves. And it is a constitutional right. It has been litigated on the level of the Supreme Court, and it is a constitutional right. Censorship is the limiting or removing access to writing, images, or ideas. And I want you to remember the limiting part, because we all know that censorship includes removing, but limiting, as in labeling or keeping certain books in a separate place, are actually forms of censorship. Sometimes we hear people talk about obscenity or things that are harmful to minors, and I just want to point out that there is a 3-point legal test for obscenity and harmfulness to minors. It isn't just a matter of opinion. If one person says that something is obscene or something is bad for kids, that doesn't seal the deal. There is a 3-part legal test of obscenity, and 2 out of the 3 mention the fact that the work needs to be taken as a whole. So taking one word or one sentence out of context doesn't make an entire work obscene and censorable. Some of the vocabulary that we talk about, a challenge is an attempt to remove or restrict library materials. And the way that we really fight against censorship attempts is through really good collection development and challenge policies that protect libraries in the event of challenges. And hopefully certified librarians are trained to follow collection development and weeding procedures. So your school district should have in the administrative procedures or board policy a collection development policy and a challenge process. And that challenge process can seem a little scary, but what it really does is it protects you, it protects your libraries, it protects the people who choose the books for the libraries, because it gives the community a way to make their voice known while also giving a process to reviewing work and checking to see if there's anything to the challenge request. And 99% of the time, there really isn't. So that process is in place to protect all of us. So where we're living. The ALA documented 2,571 books challenged in 2022, the most they've ever recorded. And PEN America found that 40% of those challenged had Black and Indigenous people of color protagonists, and 41% had LGBTQ protagonists and or LGBTQ major plot points. So there is a concerted effort, let's say, to challenge books in libraries right now by certain special interest groups. It seems like these are grassroots, parent-led things, but they aren't. They are being steered by special interest groups, and that's okay as long as we have good collection development policies and challenge processes in place. So the thing that I really want to talk about with you today is the idea of soft censorship. I think it's really important that we know and can recognize soft censorship, because this is when we're in an environment such as the one we're in right now, where challenge attempts are at historic levels, and we're all kind of on edge about it and nervous about it, it really breeds the perfect ground for soft censorship. So what that is it's the ALA calls it unilateral censorship by a library worker. And it's where certain books aren't purchased or certain books are weeded from the collection in order to preemptively avoid a challenge. And when you look back at what we're seeing being challenged, BIPOC and LGBTQ stories, if we don't buy those books to preemptively avoid a challenge, then we're going against that mission that we talked about in the beginning, right? We're going against the idea of providing windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors for our kids. We're not honoring the experiences and the questions that a lot of our kids have. So when soft censorship becomes an issue, it especially hurts minority populations. And we just can't do that. Like, as libraries, it's our job to care about intellectual freedom really above all, right? And we can't do that. So a couple of things, like legal stuff, that I think will help you to really understand where we're at. The ALA publishes a Library Bill of Rights. And in the Library Bill of Rights, most of the articles in the Bill of Rights have to do with intellectual freedom. They have to do with libraries presenting all points of view, resisting abridgment of free expression and free access to ideas. A person's right to use a library should not be denied or abridged because of origin, age, background, or views. Like, every article really in the Library Bill of Rights has to do with intellectual freedom, freedom of expression. And the ALA has published position statements making it clear that this applies to school libraries as well. So this is not just a public library Bill of Rights. It is a library Bill of Rights. Now, you may have heard come up HB 2789. It is the law that was just passed that goes into effect in January in the state of Illinois, first of its kind in the country, that all libraries must adopt an anti-censorship policy or the ALA Library Bill of Rights as policy in order to qualify for state funding. And I was very happy to see that on the last board meeting in my district, my district adopted the ALA Library Bill of Rights. So that's great. In my presentation, if you look at the slides, I link to the specific bill language if you want to take a look at it. But it says this applies to school, public, and academic libraries, and that state funding is conditional based on this. So if your school district does not adopt an anti-censorship policy or the ALA Library Bill of Rights, you will lose the ability to qualify for state library grants. So this is important. Privacy. So student privacy in the library, I think sometimes this comes as a surprise. So it is completely wrapped up in intellectual freedom. It has to do with the students' right to free expression and to be able to be interested in things, read about things without their circulation histories being scrutinized by anyone else. So Follett actually tried to take away some of the privacy protections in this about a year ago. And the ALA fought them, thankfully, and they backpedaled, so that was good. So the student circulation records are protected in private. They are protected by law, and I'll show you that law in just a minute. This means that the only people who should have administrative access to the library catalog are people who work in the library. So you, the librarian, that's basically it. Circulation history should not be shared with teachers, and overdue notices should be emailed to the students whenever possible. So this is the law. It's 75 ILCS 70/1, the Library Records Confidentiality Act. And it really goes into the conditions where circulation records can be disclosed, and that includes under a court order. So we can't share it with the police or anyone outside of the library, right? That gets a little funny with kindergartners. And I've actually talked with ALA's Office of Intellectual Freedom, with the lawyers there, and asked, like, what does that mean for our elementary folks? Because it says right in the law that this includes school and public libraries, school, public, academic, all of them. And according to Deborah Caldwell-Stone, the director of ALA's OIF, it is a little gray. It's a little murky at the elementary level. And parents obviously need to be able to know what their kids are owing to the library, right? If they have books hidden under the bed or overdue books, parents need to know about that, right? So there are instances where, you know, you have to kind of go into the gray with the law. However, as a rule, we should be considering the checkout histories of our students to be sacred and protected. So if there are certain instances where you can't help but have to share so that maybe mom can go looking for a book at home, that's perfectly fine. Nobody's coming to get you with handcuffs in that instance. But just try to honor the spirit of the law, which is that our kids have the right to read without worrying about somebody like checking over their checkout histories with a pencil or something, with a red pen. The court order stuff really gets into some interesting kind of hypotheticals, because I think it has a lot to do with the fact that, say we've had all of these bomb threats, right, at public libraries, and say the police want to know who's reading books that have to do with bombing public libraries. The librarians can't go in and look at the checkout histories on certain books and hand over lists of people to the police. That would be in violation of 75 ILCS 70/1. So it really protects us from any undue scrutiny based on the books that we read, which is really good, because I read a lot of true crime and that would be really bad for me. Okay, strategies. So just remember that no book is appropriate for every reader, but every book is appropriate for someone. Our Secretary of State and State Librarian, Alexi Giannoulis, was testifying before Congress last week Tuesday, actually, and he talked about the fact that it is 100% reasonable for a parent to decide whether or not a book is appropriate for their child, but it's not reasonable for a parent to decide whether a book is appropriate for somebody else's child. So that's really what we're protecting. And, you know, if a kid comes home with a book that mom and dad don't like, and then the kid brings it back and says, my mom and dad don't want me reading this, it's happened to me, I say, that's fine. That's fine. This isn't the book for you then. Let's go look for something that might be better for you. So just something to remember. Collection development's an art and a science. We train for it. And these days, the policies and procedures that guide collection development really have to be something that we fall back on and rely on to protect us. Same with weeding. Weeding should be done to crew and musty standards. It should not be done because of fear or a desire to avoid conflict. We shouldn't be looking for books in our collection that might, quote unquote, get us in trouble so that we can weed them. We should be looking for actual crew and musty reasons why books should be weeded, so that we have that sort of policy backup again to protect us. So what can you do going forward? If you have books labeled to restrict access, unlabel them. If you have shared student checkout histories with teachers, stop doing that. And remember that this is important work. You aren't alone, and you can always reach out if you need support. I've got a couple of toolkits here linked if you need help. So there's a toolkit for selection and reconsideration policies. Those need to be robust, and administrations have been talking about this at the district level. So if you aren't sure if your district has this, look for it. I'm sure they do, or I'm sure they've been talking about it a lot lately. Rehearse what you'll say in difficult situations, both with teachers and parents, because sometimes it's teachers coming to you about a book that they saw in the library that they're like, oh my goodness. There are great talking points out there and useful steps for going through what you would do in a difficult situation. So I've linked to those as well. And on ISLE's website, I have a laundry list of resources. If you're interested in learning more about all of this, then please go to ISLE's website, look in the Intellectual Freedom tab. There are a ton of resources that we've put together to help you to educate yourself about it and move forward with it. So thank you.
Thank you, Kristina. This was awesome. So for everyone out there that's watching, you can tell why we led with this particular presentation. It's a really super important topic for all of you. And Kristina did a fabulous job presenting it. Thank you, Kristina. Thank you to everyone who's responding with resources and posting links to stuff that's happening in the slides. We have time for like 1 or 2 questions. So if you have a question, if you want to do the raise hand feature, if you look down on your toolbar, there's a gesture you could do. You can do raise your hand. Yeah, okay. I have S. Duncan. You have your hand raised. Do you want to unmute yourself and ask a question for Kristina?
Yeah, I have a question because I'm a middle school librarian and I'm in a elementary district, and my person who's above me, I don't really know what her position technically is. She is really hitting me hard with the limiting, I guess I would say, of what I can have in my library for upper grades. You know, we're really boosting our collection with supporting struggling learners. But when we have books in our library that are rated for grades 9 and up, She wants them to be housed separately. Within the genre section, we've genrefied our library, but on a separate shelf, no YA sticker. And so I find it's really hard for me to figure out like what she's trying to do with that. And I don't want there to be a limit for the kids who read higher. Like, I don't really know how to proceed following these laws, but without limiting our collection.
Yeah, for sure. And it's not best practice to keep them housed in another place, right? And you can perhaps talk to her about the importance of reader's advisory and finding the right book for the right kids, and the fact that you might have 6th or 7th graders or even a 5th grader who can handle a YA book, whose parents can handle a YA book coming home, right?
Right.
But if your administrator is dead set, then don't lose your job either.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, she wants them, so like realistic fiction, she wants them to be in realistic fiction, just on a separate shelf, unlabeled, unmarked in any way, which I kind of feel like I don't understand the purpose of how, like, what she's trying to accomplish there, except for that they need to be separated. And I guess the idea is that really only 8th graders go there, but it wouldn't, she said, don't take it out of the hands of like a 6th grader. But then I'm like, well, then why are they separated? And they're unmarked. So I don't even know how, except that it dings separately in the system, how they're going to be considered separately. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm confused by that a little too. Why don't you give me a call or shoot me an email and we can talk through this a little more. I would love to kind of come up with some ideas for you.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. Kristina, would you mind just putting your, I know you have it in your slides, would you mind just putting your email address in the chat?
Yeah, of course.
Unfortunately, there's a ton of, it looks like there's more questions out there. I'm really sorry, but we have to move on. Again, we have a super, super tight schedule today. We have so much great stuff packed into this.